Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. We are on the final third of season 2, which I'm having an existential crisis over because it doesn't seem like it's been going by that quickly, but it has been. So I've had some wonderful people with some phenomenal conversation throughout the last, few dozen episodes. And of course, today I'm going to have yet another wonderful episode with a phenomenal human being who I've wanted to sit down and have a conversation with on the show for a while. The ever so iconic David Eric Dopko of Collect All Monsters.
Hey, thanks, Donnie. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I've actually, let's be real here. I actually reached out to you after we did our Collect All Monsters LGBTQ plus chat because I thought that went off. Like that was amazing. First of all, we're going to do it again next year. Please tell me you'll be willing to do it again next year.
Consider me part of it forever as long as you want me.
Outstanding. Yeah. And so I actually reached out to Donnie several months ago to say, hey, man, I'm willing to be on your show anytime you want to do it. And he's like, let's do the October show. And then I kind of forgot about it. So I'm in transition now. Real quick. We sold our house in Seattle, lived there for 17 years, building a house in Palm Desert, California, right next to Palm Springs. And that's going to be finished October 31st. So essentially we're homeless now. So we're living at my mom's house in New Jersey. Hence there's no collectibles around me. They're all in storage, except for I did have a box day while in New Jersey. So I have to show him off. He has to do the show with me. This is
absolutely
the 1954 Shodai Godzilla D4 Real by X Plus. That I absolutely love. I
love the D for real figures. They're so cute. I love a cute figure.
Giant D for real figure. The other
that's key.
It is key. It is key. They're like, wait a minute, I have a D for real. He's not even close to that big. So yeah, sorry, G Akamoto. This is giant scale X Plus D for real. Godzilla 1954 Shodai Godzilla. So here he is. He's going to do the show with me. And it's a perfect scenario because I'm in my mom's house in South Jersey, in Pine Beach, New Jersey, where I first discovered Godzilla. And I watched these movies for the very first time. So that's a kind of a serendipitous thing, right? To be here, started. Yeah. Growing Up with Godzilla. So what perfect place to do it from?
Yeah, a full circle moment kind of, right? So and we're gonna dive into that history in a second because I am dying to know. I'm sitting here trying to think about whether or not we've met at G-Fest yet. Have we? I don't think we have.
No, we have not. I've been going to G-Fest since 2014. That was my very first one. And I don't know how often you had been going over the past couple of years, but I really wanted to hook up with you this past year because we had such a great show.
Yeah.
The Collect All Monsters LGBTQ plus supplemental, which was amazing. And we're going to keep doing that again and again and again. But then you said you weren't going to be able to make it this year. So I was kind of bummed out.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I was pretty bummed about it. I will be there next year though. So yay.
I mean,
unless something drastic happens.
Yeah. So no, we haven't met at G-Fest. We haven't met in person. We've only done it on this.
Well, that'll change at some point, undoubtedly. It needs to happen. All right. So being that you are in this space that is serving as like a full circle moment for you, how were you first introduced to Godzilla? I want you to share your story all the way from the beginning.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I guess let me take a sip of water for this one. So as many G fans out there, a lot of us started our love for Godzilla with, translated from our love from dinosaurs. Okay. So I grew up loving dinosaurs. I loved reptiles, dinosaurs. I had dinosaur books when I was a kid. I was the kid that could rattle off all of the scientific names of the dinosaurs and amaze your friends, amaze your family. And I did that. And so I'm a bit older than some of the other G fans. So I grew up in the 70s. So, I guess my very first introduction to Godzilla was in this very house in South Jersey. My dad used to circle things that he thought I would enjoy watching on TV when I was little. And one of the things that he circled was a movie called Monster Zero on the 4:30 movie. Now, I guess it was like 1972, 73, give or take. I'm not exactly sure the year. But again, remember, I love dinosaurs. T-Rex was my favorite, of course. And he circled this movie on the 4:30 movie, and I watched it. I'm like, what is this awesomeness? I mean, we got Godzilla, of course, and then we got Rodan. And you remember Rodan's appearance from the aliens pulled him from his volcanic sort of grave or whatever it was, and Mount Washikizawa, right?
Mhm.
And in that part of the film, you don't really know what Rodan is because he's kind of like bundled up. Like I didn't know what Rodan was. Like, what is this thing?
Right.
And then it was only until they took him up to Planet X with a nuclear skill not yet known on Earth that I found out that not only was there a T-Rex, there was also a Pteranodon. You know, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And then of course we had King Ghidorah, which again, I was like totally blown away by this movie. The sound effects, the colors, the monsters. I mean, even back then, I was sort of captivated by the human story. It's just that good. It's to this day, it is in my top 5 Godzilla films. Like it kind of fluctuates between 1, 2, and 3. Like I sort of have a sliding scale. So there's 3 that I love. It's Monster Zero, the original 54, and of course Mothra versus Godzilla.
Excellent
Anyway,
selections.
yeah. I mean, so that, Donny, was my very first introduction to Godzilla. And then, of course, the floodgates opened, and then I wanted more. And growing up in South Jersey, I was very lucky because I had not only New York City channels, I had Philadelphia channels. Now, the Philadelphia channels were the ones that showed most of these Japanese monster films. So soon after, I think I saw King Kong versus Godzilla, the original Godzilla, and then Mothra versus Godzilla, et cetera, et cetera. And this is back in the day when there were no VHS tapes. There were you couldn't record anything off of your TV. There was nothing. So one of the things I have in common with John Ruffin, because he's about my age and he grew up in the same sort of region, he and I used to take tape recorders and we'd press play and hold it against the TV just so we could listen to these movies. And that's where I really got my love for Godzilla. And I just wanted more and more. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I mean, a little bit of a long-winded way to tell you.
No, that was super interesting. So like you unlocked like a core memory in me in explaining that, because I remember when I was a kid and I finally was introduced to the hate, because I grew up with the Showa series mostly,
Right.
but then like in the mid to late 90s, like the Heisei era was, very central to me. And I remember taking a tape recorder and recording all of the Mothra songs. So I could very gaily in the mirror pretend I was a Mothra fairy.
Oh, well,
And summon Mothra. And you know what? It was a very beautiful experience. So, and I still have those old tapes.
Do you really? Oh my God. If you're ever brave enough, you should, well, you can play. I'd like to hear them privately, but if you ever want to broadcast them, I'm sure people would love to hear that because that's kind of amazing. And
I have no shame and embarrassment. I mean, in a couple of episodes ago, I showed off I showed off like an old comic that was, because I used to draw. Don't do that anymore. And if you watch that episode, you'll see why I don't do that anymore. But like I did like a dramatic reading of one of those old comics, and it was, yeah. So I have no shame in.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. And in that vein, in this sort of like conversation, I'm still waiting for some fabulous drag star to go on to RuPaul's Drag Race, or actually Twins, and do the Shobijin like.
How has this not happened yet?
I don't know. I mean, I've dabbled. I've done it once or twice, but I do not make an attractive.
David, what we're gonna have to do? We're just gonna have to shave our beards, and we're gonna have to doll ourselves
But
up.
if I was younger, I know. Well, I think perhaps that ship has sailed in my direction, but I think you should go for it. You should definitely go for it. I mean, I'm better off playing like Doctor Who now. Like that's my kind of thing. Or Dr. Mifune. I could do Mifune.
That would be pretty. I would love that. Like, do it. You must do it.
Do that. But
All
anyway,
you need is like that scraggly hair wig, and you'd be ready to go.
Yeah. But speaking of the Mothra music, the Shobijin, the Peanuts, Yumi and Emi Ito. When I moved to New York City, I lived in the East Village, and there was a really cool like CD store that carried like unusual and foreign, CDs, records, and tapes and things. And I remember it was called Footlight Records. And it was somewhere between Broadway and 3rd Avenue in the East Village. I don't remember the exact street. But they had CDs of the Shobijin music, like all the Mothra music on one CD. And I still have it. And it's amazing. And it has like every single piece they did, including the Shobijin from Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, where it wasn't the Ito sisters. It was the group called Pair Bambi.
Yes.
I don't even know if they were a singing group or not, but they were twins, and they, sort of took over the reins of playing the Shobijin in one film. And I think in the show series, that was the last time we actually saw the Shobijin. If I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
it was, sadly. Unfortunately.
But my husband Keith loves Mothra. Loves Mothra versus Godzilla, loves Mothra. He is totally like all about Mothra. And that's sort of a little bit of a mutual love for the series, and he loves the music too. So that's a really cool thing.
I love that so much. A side question for you, because something that comes up a lot on Growing Up with Godzilla, like a lot of Godzilla fans will share, like, if they were able to bond with anybody over Godzilla when they were kids, largely because that's when a lot of people got into Godzilla, right? So like in like the 70s, 80s, were you able to like bond with friends over Godzilla, or did you face people who were like, Godzilla, what's going on?
Well, I'm going to say I was, to a degree. I mean, no one really was making fun of it back then, because this is I'm talking like elementary school. I didn't really. There was a period where I kind of didn't really, I wasn't really a huge fan. Like I stopped at a certain point. I think that point is when Star Wars came out.
Oh, okay.
So it had nothing to do with, oh my God, this isn't cool, I don't want to like this. I think that Star Wars totally stole the thunder of my love for the Godzilla stuff for a minute, for a little bit. I remember I grew up, at the Jersey Shore, so the beach is a block and a half from my mom's house. So I remember playing King Kong versus Godzilla with my friends in the water, and I would always have to win because I'd always be Godzilla, and we'd have arguments, who's stronger, King Kong or Godzilla. And I remember in 4th grade, Mrs. Klum's class. I was sitting there with my friend, and I can't remember his name. I think it was Ross Yeager. I think that's what his name was. He's like, oh man, I saw this movie over the weekend. It was called Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, and it was so cool. And I hadn't seen it yet. So I'm like, wait, what? And then I'm like, what does the monster look like? What does the monster look like? He tried to draw it, and it kind of looked pretty good. It looked, like a big squiggly mess with 2 eyes and stuff like that. And then they did this movie festival probably soon after, or they had been doing it and just wasn't aware of it, around Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving Day, it was WOR Channel 9 out of New York. On Thanksgiving Day, they did King Kong. They did King Kong, Son of Kong, and Mighty Joe Young. Okay. A movie festival. And then the next day, on Friday, they did a Godzilla marathon. So they did like Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, Godzilla versus Megalon, and I don't, and King Kong versus Godzilla typically, because it kind of went with the day before. So, and they did that for about 5 or 6 years every year. And I'll send you. I have the old TV guide clipping from it.
Yes,
it's called
please
WOR monster holiday special. And so kids did see it. We had to wait until it came on TV again. There was no way we could watch it unless we had those old Super 8 films.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a projector, so I just like to look at the box art.
Right.
Or the tape recorder that John Ruffin and I used to do, and I'd listen to the tape recorder. So I used to sing Save the Earth, okay, to my friend. And, oh, wait, there's one other thing, too. There was a game out there, and I have one. I bought one on eBay. It's called Creature Features.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially Monopoly, but instead of properties, they're monster properties. So they're monster films. Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Creature, The Hunchback, Godzilla, King Kong. And we'd play. My friends all loved that game. We played it so hard that we lost pieces and it like basically fell apart. I had to buy another one. Right, that's how my mom bought me another one. But people were not. I don't think I ever got made fun of like to any degree for liking Godzilla, which I think was your original question. And then when it came time for the period where that probably would have happened, because middle school was the worst time. I loved school except for middle school. I hated middle school. 7th and 8th grade were the worst. I hated 7th and 8th grade. And then 9th, 10th, you can throw 9th in there too. 7th, 8th, and 9th, middle school. I had a unique situation. My district grew so fast that there was too many children to go to a particular school. And we were on split sessions. So 10, 11, 12 went in the morning. And then 7, 8, 9 went in the afternoon. So we went to school in the afternoon. The point is, the time period of middle school is when kids are kind of mean. And I think they're the worst ever in middle school. Because everybody's unsure about themselves. They don't know who they are. They whatever. But I think if I still would have clung on to loving Godzilla stuff then, I think that's when that may have happened. But I lucked out because I loved Star Wars and everybody loved Star Wars. Like there was no one who didn't like Star Wars. And I honestly loved Star Wars. Like that was my thing. That was like my favorite thing. I saw it in 1977 in Morrisville, Pennsylvania at a drive-in with my uncle, my favorite. And it was like, I was like blown away. And so Godzilla sort of went by the wayside for many years, and we can get to that a little later. But no, I wasn't made fun of. And yes, I did connect with some kids. You know, we never really like talked about it, you know, after Star Wars came out that much. But I definitely did have some fun times playing. And you know, we had the famous Monsters of Filmland magazines, and you know. But anyway, yeah. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does. Yeah, it does. So like, I think for me, like. In elementary school, I don't remember getting made fun of for it either. In fact, like there were other kids that loved Godzilla as well. So I remember I would always, much to the dismay of our teachers, the librarian, my parents, I would always go to the library in my elementary school and check out that
Crescent.
Yeah, book. Well, that Ian Thorne, I think that's the author's name, book, the Godzilla book.
The Crescent one.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course. I had that. I basically owned that book because I kept taking it out again and again and again.
I read it so many times.
All of that incorrect information in there.
Oh yeah, it was like, and when I got older and I like started finally browsing the interwebs, I was just like, what the hell is wrong with this? Like what? But no, like in middle school, like I noticed some people kind of looked negatively on Godzilla. I think it's because like when I was in middle school, like the mid 90s and stuff like that, because there was such a huge gap between the Heisei era premiering and then it being released in the United States, like there was like just zero exposure to Godzilla.
Nobody saw it. Nobody knew. That's totally true.
So people's only knowledge of Godzilla was like, oh, those old films, you know? And I'm like, I love those films. I grew up watching those films regardless. So, but no, like for me, like I think high school was kind of like the turning point because high school was just in general a cluster, you know what? So a lot of people kind of like fell off the, you know, Godzilla train at that point in time. And that's when I just resorted to writing Godzilla fan fiction. So that was my only way.
Kept true to it, which is great. Like I completely, you know, I didn't say abandoned it, not like on purpose or anything, but it just kind of wasn't my thing. And There was one small story I can tell you in elementary school that's kind of cute. I was in third grade, and I remember it was my very first male teacher. I didn't have any male teachers until third grade. Mr. Polito was awesome, and he and I had a really good connection. And we had to do write an essay and bring something in to like a show and tell sort of essay thing. And I was at my grandfather's house, and he lived in northeastern Pennsylvania by a coal area. And I found a trilobite fossil. I found one. And I brought in the trilobite, and I used it to illustrate my story about Godzilla. You know, trilobite, Dr. Sarazawa, the oxygen destroyer. And he was blown away by how articulate and passionate I was about talking about this movie and the way I described it. So he was like, "This is awesome." I got some kind of an award for it or something like that, and it was because I brought in a trilobite and linked it into my essay about Godzilla and and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool, I think.
That is so wholesome. Oh my goodness. No, I love that though. Like, especially when we had those teachers who would kind of, encourage us, right? As
Only
opposed to shaming us. I remember probably the fondest memory I have in high school specifically. I took a creative writing class. It was like my junior year. And the teacher asked us to bring in a song that's really important to us. So
Ooh.
so I was like, do I bring in my grungy emo music that I listen to all the time, or do I pick a Mothra song? So I picked the song Mothra Leo from the 96 Rebirth of Mothra soundtrack, because I had just watched that film for the first time and I was obsessed with the musical scores. I brought it in, the entire class listened to it. They liked it or seemed to like it. And then we all wrote like a short story about it. It was like super cool.
Well,
And
that's amazing.
just
That's
like for the first moment as like a teenager, having people acknowledge something that I liked was such a very surreal experience. Like, it almost felt like being seen, if that makes sense.
You were seen, and not only did they like it, they joined in.
Yeah,
You got them to
absolutely.
join in.
Like, I printed off the lyrics for them, like in both the original language and English. It was a delight. So I love memories like that. Those are so wholesome to me.
Well, now you're making me want to go back and watch that movie again and acquaint myself with the soundtrack, because I don't know that soundtrack at all. I know, shame on me, shame on me,
Toshiyuki Watanabe,
shame on me.
chef's kiss.
But
Like,
I
so
will.
good.
That's why these things are great, because we all learn something every day, and maybe I'll find that I love it too. So I know Jonathan Portman, one of our Collect All Monsters members, he loves the soundtrack to the Mothra series, the Heisei Mothra series. So he's been asking me to sort of see if I listen to it again. So I will definitely do that. And one other addendum to my trilobite story, it wasn't all teachers who were supportive. I remember when I was a little bit younger, I think I was in second grade, I had a bad stutter when I was a kid growing up.
Mhm.
And the one reading teacher, she wasn't my regular teacher. We used to have reading groups. We go to different classrooms to however they did it back then. And I remember my reading group, it was around Halloween. And I still get stressed out thinking about it. The story was called The Preambulating Pumpkin, and everything had peas in it. Okay.
Mhm.
And I couldn't use peas without stuttering. I couldn't speak the letter P. I couldn't do it. It was one of the things that was my triggers. And this teacher would not throw me like a lifeline. She made me read this long passage of peas, and the kids were like laughing, and I was like sweating. So they weren't all supportive. I mean, most of them were. I'd say about 98% of them were, but there was a couple who were. I don't want to use a bad word on your show, but you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, I do know. And I'm okay with swearing.
Okay, she was a fucking bitch. Okay, and she was not supportive, and of course the kids are going to laugh, but she could have like given me a smaller passage. She could have said, just you can just skip it. She just didn't do it, and I think she got some kind of pleasure out of it. So I worked. The good thing about it is that was the last time that I didn't take speech class seriously. I worked really hard to overcome it, and damn it if I didn't overcome it.
Mhm.
And I still, to this day, if I get really excited or I talk fast, I'll still have a little bit of a stutter now and again, but
Mhm.
nothing like I used to have back then. And it was very frustrating because I had a lot to say and I couldn't say it because I was afraid to talk.
Oh, wow.
So this teacher screwed me and helped me at the same time. So I guess
Mhm.
it kind of balanced out. And anyway, I just didn't want you to think that everything was like, oh, everybody's great. No,
Oh,
that was
no, no. I remember having teachers too who were like who would kind of like join in with the bullies, you know, like and
unacceptable. Absolutely
yeah.
unacceptable.
And like now that I am a teacher, like I'm just like I can't ever imagine doing that to someone. Like the whole public humiliation thing I think is just very I don't know, it's just it's really like kids will remember that for the rest of their lives and
Oh,
it'll impact how they
absolutely.
interact with people.
I mean, Keith, my husband, he was bullied a lot in school. I probably shouldn't go too far into this, but to this day, he still has like effects of it. Like if we watch a movie that has bullying in it, he kind of, you know, gets a shudder because it's like that was his high
Mhm.
school experience. And again, that breaks my heart. And for me, I know we're getting a little bit off track, but I have to say one more thing. For me, my biggest regret is I didn't really bully anybody, but I didn't step in to make it stop either.
Mhm.
I wish, probably because of the stuttering too. That
Mhm.
might have been a part of it, but I didn't have the inner strength that I have now. Of course, I'm an adult now, but to sort of step in and say, you know what, this is ridiculous. Why, whatever, say something. And I know I did once or twice sort of deflect it, like make a joke about something different to sort of deflect it, but nothing that I should get any kind of an award for. And I do regret that because I was present when many kids were bullied to the point of like tears and running home and this and that. And it just, I wish I had that in me back then to be a little bit
Mhm.
more proactive and stepping in. But c'est la vie,
Well, I mean, like you were saying, like being that you could have also been the recipient of the bullying if
Oh,
you
I
were
would have
to
been
voice yourself.
for sure.
Like I think, I mean, that to me, placing myself in your shoes is a very valid reason to not involve oneself, right? Well, like, I guess the point that I was making with like this whole the whole thing about bullying and stuff like that, especially in high school, is like Godzilla was that crucial escape for me, right?
Totally.
And like there were so many instances where, and I've mentioned this on the show before, where like I would kind of go back to like if I even struggled to wake up in the morning to even go to school because I knowing what I would deal with, I'd be like, well, what would Godzilla do? Like, could Godzilla face this? Could Godzilla get through this? And that always kind of shook me from like that hesitance, right? Um,
That's awesome, and that's what it's all about. I'm so glad you pulled that from the films.
Yeah, yeah. And to this like and it's something that I think that a lot of fans can universally connect with that we don't often talk about. I think we should talk about it more because
Yeah,
there
we
are
got
some phenomenal life lessons and themes and different things to take away from these films. So, all right. So you did share your top 5 favorite films. Were those your favorite films back when you were like in middle school and high school, or are they your current favorite films now? Have they
oh,
shifted?
that's a really good question. They really haven't shifted that much, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, I still think that Mothra versus Godzilla is a masterpiece. It's
I
where
me too. I'm not gonna disagree with you on that one.
Toho's sort of everything was aligned. The planets were aligned. We had Ifukube, Honda, and Subaraya were all at the top of their games. They had great actors in these films. Um, I think the only thing that's changed now is I really do. Um, I love the design of the Millennium Godzilla,
Mhm.
even though the films aren't necessarily the best. And here's where we get to a little bit of interesting waters. I really love Godzilla versus Megaguirus.
Oh, I do
I
too.
think I'm one of the few people who can honestly say it's one of the best movies
Oh, I love it. It
of the
gives me all
millennium,
the
if
it
not the
gives
best.
me the Showa camp that I've always wanted
Totally.
in the Millennium series.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned this because the last few episodes have been going on and on and on about Godzilla versus Megaguirus because I used to be one of those haters. Like I'd be like, this movie's trash. But then I started watching it more and I was like, Donnie, dislodge your head from your rectum and see the film for what it actually is. And it's fun. It's just fun.
It's fun, and it's like Toho pseudoscience at its best. A
Yeah.
micro black hole. I mean, come on, how groovy is that? I mean, the characters are engaging. The the monster design is great. There's elements of horror in there when the mega neuron larva attacks that couple in
Yes.
Shinjuku. I mean, that's or Shibuya. I'm not sure where it was. That's kind of terrifying. And granted, it does sort of lose steam when the adult Megaguirus comes into the picture, just because the way it's executed, they couldn't do it the way they should. But the score is great. It's pounding.
Oh,
It's exciting.
Jiro Oshima.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
lord.
it's it's just a really fun film, and I don't know why people hate it so much. I think Godzilla 2000 is boring as hell.
Hmm.
It's a snooze fest. Godzilla kind of just stands there, doesn't do too much, kind of just walks right into Orga's mouth, and the military is bombarding him. He's just kind of standing there like,
Hmm.
GMK is amazing. But aside from those two, Megaguirus is just a fun, like you said, it's a throwback to the campiness of the Showa era.
I think a lot of people hate it because they simply are just perpetuating what they hear other people saying.
I agree.
That's kind of what I did. I would always hear people be like, "Godzilla versus Megaguirus is so more like dumb, blah blah blah," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right," you know. And then I got to a point where I got older and I was able to rationalize a little bit more, and I was like, "Actually, this is a fun film. Like, what is like?"
It is.
Give
It's
it a
not
second
perfect.
chance. It's the same thing I tell people with the Mothra trilogy. Yes, it's aimed at children,
Yeah.
but the kaiju battles that you get in it are phenomenal. The effects are pretty good. The score is great. Like, it checks off all those other boxes, but this one itty bitty small box that really isn't that big of a deal. And I feel the same way about Godzilla versus Megaguirus.
Now, can I sort of go off track just for a second
Absolutely.
and say that I am so completely stoked for Godzilla Minus One.
I'm gonna pee. I'm so excited. Like,
Okay.
I am so excited.
Now, you'll see sort of the similarity between my favorite Godzilla movies and a specific theme. I love horror, nuclear threat. Godzilla is man's punishment. I think man versus Godzilla, military versus Godzilla is so compelling. I mean, I love monster battles, don't get me wrong, but I mean, Godzilla in 1984, the original
Mm.
Godzilla, even Mothra versus Godzilla, for much of that movie, it's just Godzilla versus the military,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So those kind of even King Kong versus Godzilla before the battles, Godzilla is just fighting mankind.
Shin Godzilla too.
And Shin Godzilla, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like,
So this movie is going back to that particular formula. I hope from what I'm getting from the trailers and
mm.
the little tiny bits of spoilers that I'm kind of trying to stay away from, but I can't. I'm sort of like, I think this is the one I've been waiting for, and I am so I don't want to be disappointed, but I can't help but be really giddy about it.
Mhm.
And is the design my perfect scenario? Maybe not, but do I like it? I do. I love the
Oh, I
ginormous
love it.
legs. I love the
To
even though
me,
the head's a little bit too small, but I love the eyes. And the thing
ugh,
about this, Donnie, is this Godzilla's face is very anthropomorphic,
yes.
as was the Shodai Godzilla, as
Mhm.
was sort of even the Mosu Goji is a little bit anthropomorphic, and the 65 suit. Um, I love that because that can sort of infuse sort of human characteristics into Godzilla, and this one just seems like angry, pissed off, and like, you know, in pain. You know, I can't wait to see how they go about it. But the trailer gives me so much hope, and I personally don't need another monster. I think it's fine with one. I mean, I know many people in the community disagree with me, but if you want to see a monster melee, just watch the Monsterverse.
I mean, I'm always an advocate for Mothra being in everything, but I'm willing to be like, okay, like if this could lead to
there you go.
additional films.
And so here's the thing, Donny, and then I'm going to stop and we'll go back to your questions, which are awesome. Why do filmmakers in Japan and in America and all over the world don't worry about what's coming next? Don't set something up. How about making a good movie, and then we'll see what happens after this movie is awesome, just like the original Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about this a little bit. We did a supplemental with Collect All Monsters talking about Minus One, and we were sort of all in agreement. It's like maybe the next film would be a Rodan story. Just Rodan, right? Doesn't have to be an exact rehash of the movie, but and then maybe we'll do a Mothra, then maybe a King Ghidorah. Like, it doesn't have to be. We don't have to throw the kitchen sink in every movie, and we don't have to do what Marvel does, and what the Monsterverse does.
Right.
Just make a movie to set up the next one. Yeah. Right. I don't need Easter eggs. I don't need this and that. How about just making a really good, awesome Japanese terrifying Godzilla movie that gets back to Godzilla's roots and origins? And I know that's going to be controversial to a lot of people. That's going to be a hot take, but I don't care, because you all know how I feel.
This is going to be a sassy thing for me to say to those people who aren't a fan of that. I personally think that the casual ignoring of Godzilla's history is very glaring to me. Like,
totally glaring to me.
Like I don't get me wrong, I love what the Monsterverse is doing. I have my qualms with the Monsterverse. I've been enjoying it though. But like similar to you, like I really appreciate Godzilla for what it originally represented, right? Because a couple of episodes ago, I was talking to my friend Ari Whipple about this. Like, that history can't be ignored. Like, that history is meant to be bleak. It's meant to be dark. It's meant to be existentially dreadful, rooted in trauma, because that's where Godzilla comes from.
That's where Godzilla comes from. Man's punishment for dabbling in things that he has no business dabbling in, and I'm pretty sure this is where they're going with this, because we all know that the concept of Minus One is, the bomb goes off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we're just like at zero. Like, Japan is like level to like nothing, and then this big giant creature, angry radioactive monster, shows up, probably due to the dropping of these bombs, and then this is now minus one, Godzilla minus, because it's just less than zero. It's just how much worse could it get? And absolutely. I don't think we're going to find too much comedy in this movie, which it's not necessary, because if you watch the original Godzilla, there's essentially no comedy in there. There's a little bit of banter between that couple on the train, but
that's about it.
And that's about it, because and they were even joking about things that are pretty serious, about, oh God, now first it's the tuna, and now we can't do that, it's whatever, because that comes from real headlines from that time period. And when Japanese culture, pop culture, and giant monsters all kind of collide, that's my sweet spot. That's what I love. I love that.
Same here.
I'm offended that the Monsterverse completely ripped all of that out of Godzilla. There's none of that left. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Completely changed it, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But to me, and people say, what do you mean it's not Godzilla to you? It's not Godzilla to me. First of all, Godzilla's Japanese, right?
Right, yeah.
If American,
that historical context.
If USA wants to make a movie about Godzilla, set it in Japan. That's Godzilla, Gojira. It's not some. Anyway, I'm getting off the soapbox. I can't wait to hear the rest of your question.
So we've talked already about like the films and stuff like that. So like let's move more so to like the specific characters, like the kaiju, the human characters. Like over the years, like which ones have you gravitated towards and why?
Now that's a tough one. That's a really tough one, and I probably should have thought about that a little more when you sort of gave me like a heads up to what you're going to ask me. Wow. So, I think I'm going to sort of stick to my original like line of thinking where I say my favorite movies are the serious ones. And I think that creates better characters when there's an actual threat, like a real threat. And I'm going to just use the original 54 as an example, because I think that is perfect, because you're so compelled by the human drama. It doesn't even matter that the monsters aren't on screen.
Right.
There's so much going on, and it's actually the character twists and arcs sort of are intertwined with the outcome of the movie, and like that love triangle is integral in saving the world. Like if that didn't happen, Godzilla may still be around and destroying other places. So I just think that I love characters that propel the story forward, that are affected by what's happening with the giant monster action. And Dr. Serizawa is a perfect example. That character is tragic. I always feel so bad for him because he, excuse the expression, gets the shit under the stick in that film. Totally.
No, he does.
And it's not like Emiko did anything on purpose to fall in love with somebody else. I mean, the heart wants what the heart wants. But she was torn because she had great respect for him, yet she was in love with Ogata, this dashing young, naval officer. And even though her father, they had arranged the marriage before, she was kind of just going through the motions. She thought of him as a brother. But and then you've got the sort of the eccentric paleontologist, Dr. Serizawa, who's sort of like, the one who actually makes things happen, even though Serizawa does too. They all kind of make things happen. But I think those types of characters are really compelling to me. Of course, I love the citizens of Planet X. I tend to love the villains too. Like,
I do love the villains. I do love them.
If I was ever cast in like any play, I used to do theater back in the day, I will always choose like sort of the mysterious character of the villain, because I think they have the most interesting backstories. Their motivations are not maybe what you think. Doctor Who from King Kong Escapes. I love him. He's so over the top and very Kabuki-esque in his performance. I don't know. That's a really tough question, but I think the characters that mean the most to me from these films are the ones that are from the more serious entries. I think if that's sort of answers your question a little bit.
No, that was a perfect answer. No, like as I grow older, I gravitate toward the villains a lot. But I also like I love me the really strong ladies.
Well,
in the Millennium era. Like, so like we were talking about like Megaguirus. Wasn't
Sujimori
wasn't she one of the first like main female characters where the entire film focused mostly just on her?
I believe you're right. And
then of course that led into like the female protagonist in GMK, and then like Akane and like the Kiryu saga. Like just those, like I love them, and I think that like they very much were integral for me because that like those came out when I was in like high school. So I was just like, these women are powerful. Somehow I am powerful. Don't know if I am yet, but I will get there.